So, hello and welcome to a special edition of the MCC Brussels podcast.
Bonjour, bienvenue à tous à cette édition spéciale des podcasts du MCC Bruxelles.
As you can tell, it's a special edition because we're focusing on doing a dual lingual version of the podcast today. We're branching out into French.
Après des siècles de domination de la langue anglaise, c'est maintenant notre revanche. Et donc, c'est pour ça qu'on va faire aujourd'hui cette édition spéciale du podcast en deux langues, en anglais et en français.
And the reason for this is because we're joined by a very special guest, Jérôme Munier. Jérôme, welcome. Paul, why don't you introduce our guest?
Alors, Jérôme Munier est le président et fondateur du parti politique Chez Nous, parti politique belge, conservateur, populiste et identitaire.
Yeah, Jérôme, welcome.
Thanks for having me.
The way this is going to work today, firstly, Paul and Jérôme will talk a little bit about Chez Nous and what Chez Nous are doing differently and why Belgium needs a new political party. Then we'll broaden the conversation out to touch on some issues of free speech and the kind of populist moment in Belgium. So, Paul, over to you.
Alors, Jérôme, première question, pourquoi Chez Nous? Pourquoi avez-vous ressenti ce besoin de fonder ce parti politique en Belgique? Et quel est votre rôle au sein de ce parti?
Mais bonjour à vous deux. Hello, bonjour. Ça me fait plaisir d'être ici. Nous avons fondé Chez Nous il y a exactement maintenant 2 ans et demi, ensemble avec Jordan Bardella, donc le président du Rassemblement national, et Tom Van Grieken, le président du bilingue. Et nous avons fondé ce parti car il y avait un vide politique en Wallonie. Là où les partis comme le nôtre, les partis patriotes comme tu le disais, les partis identitaires, les partis conservateurs sont en train de gagner partout en Europe, en Wallonie nous avions strictement rien. Donc nous avions un parti libéral, donc de centre droit, et à la droite de ce mouvement réformateur il n'y avait rien. Alors qu'on voit que la Wallonie est une des régions, si pas la région la plus pauvre d'Europe, qu'on voit que la délinquance, la criminalité atteint des sommets, alors qu'on voit qu'il y a un gaspillage d'argent public, qu'il y a un contrôle de l'État PS incroyable en Wallonie. Il n'y a jamais eu ce genre de mouvement qui a réussi à s'implanter en Wallonie. Et donc nous avons lancé ce mouvement il y a 2 ans et demi pour effectivement limiter le gaspillage d'argent public, limiter l'immigration massive, limiter l'islamisation, recréer une dynamique économique et arrêter ce wokisme ambiant, cette écologie punitive. Voilà un peu le résumé de ce nouveau parti, donc qui s'appelle Chez Nous, que j'ai fondé ensemble avec mon ami Grégory Van den Bruel il y a 2 ans et demi et dont je suis toujours le fier président aujourd'hui.
Vous avez évoqué rapidement les autres partis. Quelle est vos différences fondamentales, notamment avec le parti assez libéral de droite actuel?
La grande différence, c'est qu'on est un parti identitaire. Donc là où ils sont un parti libéral. Donc nous, on veut défendre notre identité. Mais souvent, on veut défendre notre identité du village à la civilisation. Le mouvement réformateur, donc ce mouvement libéral de Charles Michel que tout le monde connaît malheureusement, je dis bien malheureusement en Europe, est un parti qui a absolument voulu signer ce pacte de Marrakech et qui a fait tomber le dernier gouvernement pour signer ce pacte de Marrakech. Alors que nous, on veut défendre notre identité, on veut stopper l'immigration et que eux sont depuis plus de 25 ans au pouvoir maintenant et qui n'ont fait que aggraver la situation et qu'on est un pays. Et vous habitez tous les deux à Bruxelles, donc un pays les plus islamisés d'Europe. Et Bruxelles est la consécration, je veux dire, de cette islamisation en Europe.
Alors, on voit un grand succès dans le développement du parti Vlaams Belang, donc en Flandre. Est-ce que vous voyez ce succès comme une inspiration? Est-ce que ça vous permet de vous rendre compte qu'il y a une possibilité de remettre en cause éventuellement la doxa dominante?
Mais il n'y a pas simplement que le Vlaams Belang. On voit le Rassemblement national, on voit Chega au Portugal, on voit les Suédois démocrates, on voit le PVV de Geert Wilders. On voit en fait que tous ces partis sont en train de monter. Donc le Vlaams Belang a fait un score, je crois qu'ils sont deuxième parti en Flandre maintenant, ensemble avec la N-VA aussi, mouvement conservateur. Donc ensemble ils font 50% des voix, alors qu'en Wallonie nous n'en avons fait que 4,5. Et donc oui, il y a plein d'exemples en Europe qui nous inspire et qui nous motive surtout à continuer, parce qu'on voit que nos idées sont les bonnes. On est du bon côté de l'histoire, et donc on va continuer à avancer. Le seul problème, c'est qu'on a 40 ans de retard. Quand on compare aux Vlaams Belang, ils ont eu leur premier succès dans les années 80. Quand on regarde le Rassemblement national, ils ont eu leur premier succès dans les années 80. Et donc, nous, on a 40 ans de retard à cause d'une série de difficultés dont on va sûrement parler, le cordon médiatique, cordon politique, etc. Mais oui, tous ces partis patriotes sont des exemples, et on pense qu'on est à un moment donné un tournant en Europe grâce à la montée de ces partis patriotes, et Chez Nous veut apporter sa pierre à l'édifice.
Alors moi, comme vous l'avez évoqué, j'habite à Bruxelles. Enfin, pas tout à fait, puisque j'habite dans la région donc de la Flandre. Donc ça fait 5 mois. J'ai déménagé pour travailler pour le MCC Bruxelles. J'ai entendu dire, enfin en fait c'est la réputation en fait de la Wallonie, que c'est la partie de la Belgique qui est assez wokiste, assez progressiste. Qu'en est-il réellement? Est-ce que c'est une réalité? Quelle est votre position par rapport à ça?
D'un point de vue progressiste, on va très très loin. Donc je veux dire, surtout cette âme éthique, que ce soit le mariage homosexuel, que ce soit l'avortement, que ce soit l'euthanasie. La Belgique est le parti, je veux dire, le plus libéral en Europe. En fait, on voit, à cause de cette déconstruction de la société, on voit que les Belges, les Européens en tant que tels, se raccrochent à un moment donné à leur tradition, à leur folklore. Et cette vague wokiste est en train de détruire nos traditions, notre folklore. Chez nous, Saint-Nicolas est très populaire, dans le nord de la France également. Mais donc en Belgique, Saint-Nicolas est très populaire. Donc Saint-Nicolas, pour vous donner une idée, c'est un saint, un homme blanc, barbu, qui porte une mitre avec une croix sur la mitre et qui est accompagné du père Fouettard. Le père Fouettard, c'est aussi un homme déguisé et qui a le visage noir parce qu'il passe à travers la cheminée pour apporter des cadeaux aux enfants. Et en fait, on voit au fur des années, on voit que le Saint Nicolas perd sa croix sur la mitre. On voit que le père Fouettard ne peut plus être noir. Le père Fouettard peut avoir toutes les couleurs, peut être bleu, peut être rouge, peut être vert, mais il ne peut plus être noir. Donc on ne peut plus voir la suie en fait sur son visage, parce que directement ces wokistes vont traiter les défenseurs de nos traditions de racistes, parce que blackface, etc. Et donc on voit en fait que toutes ces traditions, et il y en a d'autres, on peut parler du sauvage date également, donc toutes ces traditions, le carnaval aussi, où le carnaval, on a l'habitude en Belgique aussi de parodier toutes les religions. Et ça aussi, c'est remis en question par ces wokistes, cette doxa dominante. Et donc, on veut défendre ces traditions, ce folklore. On peut plus parler d'un marché de Noël, on doit parler de plaisir d'hiver, il ne peut plus y avoir de crèche. Et donc, ce sont des petits exemples qui ne changent pas la vie d'un homme. Mais si on additionne tous ces changements, je veux dire, dans nos traditions, dans notre folklore, on voit qu'on perd au fur et à mesure notre identité. L'identité wallonne est surtout caractérisée par ces traditions, par ce folklore. Ce n'est pas par une hymne nationale ou par un chant wallon, c'est surtout catégorisé par ce folklore, par ces traditions qu'on est malheureusement en train de perdre.
Merci beaucoup.
And yeah, well, we'll get out into some broader issues, but I mean, hearing some of that, you talked about a lot of issues, and I'm just curious, I guess, when you're out there speaking to Walloon voters, what do you think is kind of the main issue that you have that you think is cutting across, or that voters are thinking, right, means I have to kind of broaden my political horizons and think about a different party? What is the one issue you think that you have a lot of play with?
Immigration. It's quite simple. I don't think the last elections over the 5, 6, 7 years that you had were mainly about another topic. If you see Trump against Clinton, if you see Remainers against Brexiteers, if you see Macron against Marine Le Pen, the main issue is always immigration, and that's a case in Brussels. That's a case in Wallonia. Of course, there's people want to get paid for their money, because in Belgium we are the most how do you say that? We pay the most taxes in the world. So that's another issue. But I think the main issue is still immigration. And that's why the people vote for us, because we put it on the map in Wallonia. No other parties were talking about it. Immigration is like taboo in Wallonia. So we put it on the map. Islamization, we put it on the map because it wasn't discussed. It's quite impressive if you compare it to other countries where we talk freely about immigration, that you can be against or for immigrations, but there is a discussion in Belgium. In Wallonia, there's no discussion about this topic.
So, I mean, you mentioned the taboo that governs some of these issues, and I think nowhere is that more strongly expressed than in the fact that it's actually become almost impossible, not just in the sense of there being a social taboo, but actually a physical taboo against having these discussions and holding meetings or actually delivering pamphlets or whatever it is. You've faced, I know, a lot of campaigns and pressure and Antifa, etc., against allowing your meetings to take place. Could you walk us through some of the kind of anti-democratic pressure that you've been under?
Well, it started at our first meeting. So we invited, like I said, Tom van Grieken and Jordan Bardella, so like chairman of the two of the biggest parties here in Europe, and it was cancelled. We wanted to do it near Liège, in Herstal, and it was cancelled by the mayor. So we had to change the venue and to organize a press meeting instead of a proper meeting with a live audience. And it's quite impressive because if you are correct in the press, you talk about this kind of thing. Like there's a new party in Wallonia. They're supported by one of the two biggest parties in Europe. It's a conservative party. Like every journalist knows there is a gap in Wallonia, and it's quite serious because we went all in on social media. So they saw that there was some labor and some structure behind this party, and none of the media talked about Chez Nous. We maybe had 2 or 3 lines in some local newspaper, and this cordon médiatique. So the fact that the media doesn't talk about Chez Nous kept on. So we are not invited on television. So they can write about us, to treat us like fascists and extremists, but they will never call me. So they will write about Chez Nous, but I never had a call from a French-speaking journalist. So I had interviews on live TV in Flanders, France, Sweden, German media, but never from Walloon media. So it's unique in Europe. You can treat Zemmour and Marine Le Pen like differently than other politicians, but they are invited on French television. We weren't invited. So you had a cordon médiatique. You also had a cordon politique. So we were invited for debates. We were invited for lectures in schools. We were never invited, and we were never able to organize a proper meeting. So
I wanted to specifically on these kind of issues, and we'll get into some of the ones that people will know we faced at HCC Brussels. But specifically, you've tried to organise meetings. Kind of what's happened? Why were they cancelled?
Because the Antifas were always there. So the Antifas, it's always the same problem. The Antifas send an email to the mayor of the city that we wanted to organize a meeting in. They send the email, if you let this meeting happen, we will break down everything. So please, Mr. Mayor, stop this meeting. And so 2 days before the meeting, I had a letter in my mailbox saying that this meeting is cancelled, is not allowed. So it's always the same, because there could be trouble on the public space. Always the same excuse they were handling.
Yeah, sometimes it seems that there's a particular problem here in Belgium and in Brussels about these kinds of free speech and democracy issues. Paul, you were with us there at NatCon when this happened kind of famously, when we were involved in NatCon Brussels, and we, as people will know the story, we saw off the closure orders from two mayor, and then the third one, and the police come in. What do you make of that? What did that tell you about free speech in Brussels and Belgium?
It was very impressive how we figured such a violent answer from even like the local public representative. They used the same argument as they used against Chez Nous. The mayor used the same, said like there is public trouble and about the security, so we can't have this happening. And we saw that it was not that dangerous, in fact. And we have this big image of Zemmour being prevented from entering his NetCon conference where he was about to give a speech by a police line. It's very impressive. I worked for Eric Zemmour during his French presidency campaign, and I faced a lot of problems. I was working in the meeting organizations, so we faced a lot of problems with especially Antifa, as you expressed, and they were much more violent than what we faced for NatCon, for example. But our meetings never got cancelled. I've been kicked. I've been kicked by Antifa. I got fireworks in my legs, but it never got cancelled. That was the difference with NatCon. And as Jérôme said, but the treatment. The treatment by the law is different between Brussels and Wallonia, right?
Mm-hmm. Exactly. I think you guys won before the judge, so you had some good arguments, like free speech, I think, is the best argument you can have.
Yeah.
But we lost 2 times before a judge. So even I don't like this word like system. I don't like to say I fight the system.
Yeah.
But after 2 years of Chez Nous, I do fight the system. I do fight the political system. I do fight the financial system, because one of the banks, I've got an organization, so I've got a bank. They canceled our transactions. I fight the juridical system, and I fight the media system. So Chez Nous is like on his small level fighting this system set in place to prevent our kind of party to grow in Wallonia. And this has been going on, because I'm not the first who's trying to get this kind of party started, and it's been going on for 20 years. So my predecessors had the same problems. So it's difficult. There's a whole system against us, but we'll keep on fighting.
Yeah. It's interesting you talk about there being a system, because one of the things that was revealed to us through the experience of NatCon was that, and you alluded to this as well, and maybe you could expand on it, is the way in which the authorities and Antifa seem to have this symbiotic relationship where the authorities quite like the fact that there's a threat from Antifa, and in some cases you suspect even maybe suggest to Antifa that maybe they should say that there's going to be some problem. Can you expand on that kind of relationship between the authorities and almost the paramilitary wing of wokeism, which is like Antifa?
Well, actually, it's not even hidden. All the main cities in Wallonia are glad to say that they are anti-fascist cities. So they all, like for 2 years that we exist, every time we had a meeting, or we tried to have a meeting, the week after there was a special council of the city to talk about Chez Nous. They never mention Chez Nous, but we know they are talking about us, and they say like it's impossible, like in the 21st century, to have a fascist party here. So let's call Liège, let's call Charleroi, let's call Mons, let's call Moucron anti-fascist city. And so they roll out actually the red carpet for anti-fascists to come and to speak at the city council and to say why it's important to block those fascist party that Chez Nous represents. So it's not hidden. So every time there's a meeting, of course, there's a direct contact between the mayor of the city and the leader of the anti-fascists in that city. So it's not even hidden. And the fact is that the violence coming from the anti-fascists. We've got some videos showing that they are beating like with 20 anti-fascists, like two militants of Chez Nous. They were handing out some pamphlets. They were beating them up. So it's a shame. It's quite disgusting actually. This kind of proximity between politics and those anti-fascists.
Yeah, and I mean, I think one of the things that we might see, you talked about being branded fascist, but one of the interesting things for me at the moment is the way in which that rhetoric, I think, is increasingly not working, and that there's ordinary people can see that there's a huge disconnect between the rhetoric that the elites use and actually the reality of people like who are just conservative or right-wing individuals or parties. You must have seen a little bit of this in France, Paul, the way that, say, Rassemblement National or other parties like slowly broke through this that part of the cordon sanitaire, and that at some point it became implausible for people to really see these parties as fascist or as ultra-right or far-right or whatever.
Yeah, it's. I think. If we go back in the history, in early 2000, there was a presidential election, and on the second round, you had Jacques Chirac against Jean-Marie Le Pen, and so they called for this cordon sanitaire on the second round, and so Jacques Chirac won at 80+%, if I remember well. And now we saw that on the last presidential election that it's almost 50-50 now. So we evolved a lot in the recent in the past 2 decades about breaking through this cordon sanitaire, and also Eric Zemmour during the French presidential campaign has been one of the most invited, I think, candidates on TV news. But the problem is that we are kind of going back to this cordon sanitaire with the decision of the French government, but some institution related to government to cut down TV channels that were dedicated to some radical right, not dedicated, but that were giving
open
the ability, and given the ability of right parties to speech and right deputies and right etc. So and we still need to struggle about this influence.
Yeah, and certainly here. I mean, Jérôme, it's slow going, it's difficult. Obviously, the media is stacked against you, the political class is stacked against you, the banks are stacked against you, but nonetheless, you make progress bit by bit. And I think we see that those old gatekeeping organizations, such as the media, like it's not the only way that you can get your message out. So how would you find your experience of slowly kind of breaking through that barrier?
No, it's certainly not the only way. We see that this cordon social, cordon politique is working for small parties like ours. It doesn't work for Zemmour. It doesn't work for Le Pen, calling Le Pen fascist. I think no one does this anymore because they know it's outdated. It works for small parties and for countries like Wallonia, who doesn't have this kind of party represented in the parliaments. But we managed to get a message out, of course, via social media. So we put all in on social media. We have a lot of young people. So we have a lot of videos on TikTok, on YouTube Shorts, on Instagram, on Facebook. And so I'm glad I'm living in this area, in this era, because if I couldn't get this message past like 15 or 20 years ago when social media was at this beginning. So it's an opportunity for us. Like we don't have to spend a lot of money to have 100,000, 1 million views on certain videos. So we managed to get our message out. Not enough, because we are competing against parties that have millions of euros on their bank accounts, so they can spend a lot of money on campaigns, on social campaigns, on media campaigns. So we don't have this. So it's David against Goliath. Because the public financing, and that's another problem with that we have, public finance of political parties here in Belgium is crazy. they got a lot of money. Then they don't know what to do with this. So they invest in real estate. They invest on la bourse. So
in the stock exchange.
Yeah. So they invest on the stock exchange. So it's we don't have any money. We don't have people that work full time for us. So we do everything ourselves, like after hours, doing weekends, and we have to work against parties that have 100,000 people. They have millions on the bank accounts, and they every day on the television. We are not. They can have meeting wherever they want. We cannot. So there's a lot of excuse that I can have. Like, okay, we failed. It's not our fault, and I'm not using it. I say if we fail, it's our fault. Like we managed to get 4.5% last elections after 2 years, and we're gonna win the elections in 2029. That's our goal.
Yeah, you touched on something that we've been very interested in here, especially ever since the European elections, but also going back a little bit, is the kind of increasing mobilization or radicalism of young people. And I actually like both of you to touch on this, because I know you've got some experience on this, Paul, as well. But let's start with you. Like, why is it you think that across Europe it seems that, I mean, everyone knows, we were told that the young people, they're going to be the Greens, they're like going to follow Greta Thunberg and going to get into woke issues and climate issues and all the rest of it. But it's not quite that simple, is it, Paul? Young people are also kind of waking up to the reality of the difficulties that Europe faces in terms of economy, immigration, etc. Well, what do you think's kind of changing among young people?
You said the right word, reality. And this was very interesting because among my family, it's very interesting because my 3 siblings and me are more conservative, more on the populist side, that we would totally agree with the Chez Nous values, but not the rest of our family. And when my parents asked me, okay, why do you have these values? Why do you have this mindset, etc.? I tell them like simple word, reality. The thing is that we face this, and we are so censored by the life, I would say, by the environment, like the working environment, even our studies, everything is in censored us. And I remember that with one of my friends, we were eating French fries at 3 a.m. In Paris, and he told me, "Man, I'm so lonely. I'm so lonely." We too found ourselves like we didn't even pay attention. We didn't even notice how we found out that we have the same values, but it's so rare. We are so lonely. Where can we find people like us? And we were struggling into this, and this is what I found while I started working in this political field. When I started working with Zemmour, people, like young people, having the same values as me.
Yeah. And
this is what made a great connection. Yeah. So I think there is a big shift, and this is like thanks to the reality, and that young people are fed up. We see it very recently in England, for example.
Yeah.
And so we gather, and that's why a lot of radical right parties are gaining a lot of votes among young people.
Yeah, and Jérôme, you must see this as well a bit in Belgium, but what issues do you think are actually cutting through with young people?
Well, I have to agree with Paul. It's reality, and we talked about the cordon médiatique. We talked about the cordon politique. There's also a cordon social. So people have to be proud of their ideas, and they have to be able to talk about this with their friends, with their colleagues, with their family, and so on. And all the people, like my generation or the generation of my parents, are scared, I think, to talk about these issues that they face. In reality, they're afraid to talk about their interest and their convictions. And the young people that didn't get fed up by this traditional media would always say like, no, this is the wrong side of history, you're fascist, you're extremist, you're racist. They didn't they weren't fed up with this all the youth, because they're more and more on social media, so they can see they have other news like MCC, like those kind of podcasts that my parents didn't have, that my generation didn't have, and so they are like not afraid anymore to talk about this, to talk like there's a problem with integration, with assimilation. There's a problem with immigration. We have to stand up for our values and so on. And so I think this cordon social, so not to be scared anymore of your ideas, will come from this young generation. Not from my generation, but will come from Noah, who's a president of the youth section, who's 22 years old. This generation will take over and will get rid of actually this mainstream ideas.
Yeah, well, it's actually quite a nice positive end for us to end the podcast on. Jérôme, thanks so much for coming in. Really enjoyed that
for having
conversation.
me.
We'll see you back at the MCC Brussels podcast very soon.